One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours, it will be ours.
Events leading up to the sit-ins. Food counters in Greensboro, North Carolina, refused service to McNeil and had no other choice but to go back to his dorm hungry. He let out his frustration on his roommate, David Richmond, two other students, McCain and Blair Jr. The four friends had enough on the issue of African Americans being dehumanized and knew they had to do something about it. The four friends were able to attain support from a local Ralph Johns owner, who had long urged blacks to stand up for their rights. Johns joined the NAACP and encouraged local college students to challenge Jim Crow. He even put up signs in front of his store saying "God hates segregation." McNeil kept in touch with Jones, which eventually followed up with Jones supporting the four friends to fight for equal rights. Even gave them money for purchases that would help the process. Johns gave them tips that would become the sit-ins. Blair Sr. was a member of the NAACP, a local activist. As a member of the NAACP, he pressured merchants to incorporate non-traditional jobs available to blacks. In 1965, Mr. Blair and his daughter attended the Greensboro's Christmas parade. His daughter got hungry, so they ended up eating at the counter because he was tired. He asked to get a sandwich. To his surprise, he was served, even though the black waitress knew she was not allowed to serve a colored person. Once the assistant manager noticed what was being done, the assistant manager then wanted to redirect them to the stand-up counter. Mr. Blair did not budge. He and his daughter ate before leaving. This event had little impact due to the fact that there were few who witnessed it. Mr. Blair also never repeated this until his son did it 2 months later. The sit-ins occurred on February 1st, 1960, by four students by the names of David Richmond, Franklin McCain, Aziel Blair Jr., and Joseph McNeil, walked into the Woolworth store. When they sat down in the lunch counter, following the store policy, staff refused to serve the black men at the white-only counter and asked them to leave. However, the four stayed until the store closed that night. The next day, more than 20 other black students recruited from other campus groups joined the sit-in. Following the news of the sit-ins, many of the southern states soon followed. How did this affect the civil rights movement and activists? The sit-ins were a movement that heavily influenced both the people and their surrounding communities. The activisms emboldened black adults to voice their dissatisfactions and brought many young African Americans a new sense of self-respect. This movement showed the shift of leadership and strategy in the civil rights movement away from the traditional organizations to students. On a national level, the sit-ins in Greensboro launched a wave of anti-segregation sit-ins across the South and opened a national awareness of the depth of segregation in the United States. It gave the civil rights movement a new energy and urgency that culminated first in major civil rights legislation and eventually in the demand for black power. In addition, the increasing level of confrontation increased the pressure on the system of racial segregation and pushed the following into action: a civil rights bill, the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Act, and the Voting Rights Act.